tomorrow I am leaving for Texas for the Success 3.0. I shouldn't say Success 3.0. It's the Center for Integral Wisdom, which organized the Success 3.0 conference board meeting. And a lot is swirling in my consciousness, and I'm here sitting in the trees holding it all. Not in, but holding a space large enough for it all. And I was just making some notes about what inspires me about MormonStories.org. And it's more the structure and the space and how to enter into a particular conversation. So 2 nights ago, I went to a community meeting that was held in the Palo Alto High School auditorium that was basically for parents to have a place to discuss and hear expert opinions on mental health and well-being in the Asian American community. So it took this cultural lens look at mental health. So it was controversial in terms of, why is it cultural? Why are we having this discussion only about culture and because it's universal? I didn't feel it was controversial. I felt very excited that there was something that was going to hopefully bring some of the specific cultural mindsets to the surface. And so it was really fascinating. It's been fascinating to have conversation with non-Asian people about the subject of Asian possible risk factors contributing to suicide among youth in Palo Alto. So all of those factors are really important because it is a very specific population, and it really, in my view, is the intersection of so many of the different cultural stress points and collisions that happen that contribute to not only suicide and depression, but subclinical desperation. That's my term that I'm coining. So I was excited, and I didn't know anyone in the room, and the panel was 7 people, 6 plus a moderator, 3 psychiatrists, 2 clinical psychologists, and 2 non-credentialed people who actually had the most powerful voices in the room, I felt. One of them was the mother of a boy who had committed suicide in 2009. Absolutely heart-wrenching to hear her voice, to see her there speaking about it. And a 35-year-old man who was Vietnamese American and went through a long period of despair and multiple suicide attempts, finally got a diagnosis of bipolar and went through a recovery and became a peer counselor and youth mentor for community mental health. And so you had the whole range, and 6 out of the 7 of them were Asian American. One was white, a white woman who was married to an Indian man, so that was her tie. But they all had the lens of being interested in cultural factors that contribute to mental illness or mental health. And what I walked away with again was observing. There were many, I think every single person was so valuable because they shared their personal perspective, how they entered this field, why they became interested in cultural factors, what personally drove them to do it, because it is personal. I loved that even the psychiatrists who were more on the kind of presenting the data and the evidence and the referring to the books were open about their own personal motivation to enter this field, and that's very self-aware. And one of the women talked about how like 5 of her college friends all went into psychiatry because of one friend of theirs who went through Johns Hopkins Medical School and committed suicide at some point during that time. And so they all went into psychiatry to for their own reasons, I'm sure, but for her it was to really understand that, and it became her life's work. And she's now the head of inpatient psychiatry at Stanford. So, and she's a mother, and she recommended the Tiger Mother book as reading for the parents. Not as a how-to, she said, but as a kind of a turnaround book, which, yes, and I'm not sure how beneficial that is to a certain generation that comes from it. I mean, I found that book to be, from the receiving end, the daughter's end of that, to be amazingly courageous for a mother to be so truthful about the heinousness of her, like, extreme behaviors. And it was also a screenplay of most of my childhood, scene by scene, which indicates to me, again, now that I look at it, it's like they're genetic mental patterns that have been handed down generationally throughout a culture and propagated just like DNA. So they're thought patterns, they're speech patterns, behavioral patterns. And by bringing them to the surface and talking about them and learning transformational ways of being with these, we have this opportunity to be awake in a way that we've never been as a ethnicity, as a culture. So that's what was exciting for me about this meeting. I realized that more and more I'm coming to the realization that my value, kind of being on the outside, is the value of bringing a discussion to the table that doesn't involve disease models and diagnosis, because there's a lot of that. And it's a route that I see the value of, because I will admit, when I'm listening to the 35-year-old talk about recovery, it was like he was so pumped and jazzed about his, new identity and his community and his opportunities to serve through the recovery community that it almost made me want to have a diagnosis too. It was like that. It was that excitement. It was that rallying. And so is that the right reason to seek mental health? Maybe. And that really may be enough. Like, I just want a community. I want people to understand me. So if I have to go and get that or find that out, great. But what about the subclinical desperation that most of our population in the United States, regardless of ethnicity, is living in? So the displacement of unfelt emotions, etc. We don't have to get into that. But where is the space for that? And here's where it gets back to Mormon stories and the power of it for me. Just experiencing it, just encountering its existence in the world. I was like, whoa, okay. So we're hearing not just one person's solution to a problem, which is like the world I've been in is about like big faces and personalities and websites that have people's names in them. And they're promoting their book, their product, their program, their classes, their talks, their CDs, their whatever, their teleclasses, their coaching. It's sort of like this formula. And it's great. A lot of my teachers have been from that. I've encountered them that way. And it's so refreshing to see a place where you hear people in conversation. So you're hearing a wide range of perspectives around a certain topic, and it's allowing the listener, or inviting the listener and participant to create and make and weave a story of their own through this collage of stories. Now it takes more time, takes more engagement from the person receiving, which I think is the value of it, because we're so fed as consumers by things that we're just supposed to react to. Like, here's my list of things, here's my, here's what I have to say, here's my solution to it, here's the 10 things, here's the 3 things, here's the 6 things. And So we have this filing system that we have to develop to just like put that there and try to like take it in somehow and then remember it and apply it, versus the power of sitting in the slow process of digesting. So notice the parallels between how we eat our food, fast food versus slow food. So sitting in the slow process of digesting conversations from unique human beings, and then another conversation between unique human beings, and just sitting with that, and then stepping back from it and saying, what am I getting? And not in an academic way, but that question is not asked as a homework assignment, but it's actually just the process of, I've now experienced these stories, and now that I step back, I am different because I've taken that in and it's digesting, it's integrating in me, and I've been awakened in some way. Similar to watching this panel the other night, hearing those bits of stories and hearing, just different ways of seeing is so valuable. So my perspective is, my question, my experiment is, what can we do that doesn't require a diagnosis or problem to be identified, but rather just gather and have unique, enriching, true, deep conversations of the heart, and allow what's happening to emerge and become self-evident, and allow it to be something different for every listener. So the other thing I notice about this kind of space is that it supports the asking of questions rather than coming with answers. And here's the thing that I notice. My best teachers, who now have online presence because it's just sort of part of the game, but they're old school, and their teachings are actually about supporting the asking of questions. Even though all the marketing, which really just their marketing, I mean, the marketing of teachers who I've experienced in real life as being powerful, just kind of like hits this wavelength in me that's like, ew, because they have to offer solutions and bullet points and answers and punchiness to get people to register for their classes. So I have just refused to participate in that, and I still continue to be staunch in my refusal to even attempt to package what I'm doing in that consumer model. And to my own peril, I suffer the consequences, or I reap the benefits of remaining true to how I think of how I do things and how I want to present it. So that is my other experiment, which remains to be seen, what that results in for me. But so that's the other aspect of Mormon Stories that inspired me, that it's not on that, it's a donation based. There's different, and it, the way it's done is strategic in terms of having levels of support. So in a way, it's analogous to this marketing funnel or marketing pyramid that the online marketers have. But this is a donation level where if you find value in this, you have different levels of donation support that you can participate in. And what I see in that is that it's also gift economy. So Charles Eisenstein, this, to me, this is another expression of gift economy, where it's, it's already there. The gift is given. And so this donation structure says, what is the value of it to you? And if you have truly received value from it, here's a way to gift to this project, should you choose to do it. But the gift has already been given. Everything is already available to everyone without charge, which I love. And I just love the boldness of that in today's world, where there's, what are you really getting that's of value without some kind of a agenda or hook or attempt to get you to buy into something. Whereas these stories they are of true benefit to the specific people that they benefit. So it's not, it's not a mass media, mass consumer market project. It's ultra laser specific. And that's another aspect of its power. So the compelling aspect of it for me is, just it's so easy. Mormon stories. And it's to me, and to come up with, to find the one word that would encapsulate this intersection that I'm seeing in my world, it's probably success, which is why I was drawn to Success 3.0 Summit. But success is such a central myth, not only in our culture, but in cultures where it seems unavailable. So they make up a myth about what it means, and a lot of it is encapsulated in America. So it's like, for me, it's the intersection of a whole bunch of people that are still living in survival mentality, survival thought patterns, that are applying the survival thought patterns to a society and a situation of relative affluence and abundance. And what happens when you do that? And what happens when you have areas of high concentration of elite education? So this is where Excellent Sheep comes in, and it's something that I just discovered, that book, which is kind of a rant against what elite education has become. And I agree with a lot of it, especially the failure aspects. And failure, which no one wants to hear about failure. So maybe it's failure stories. I'll have a great time recruiting people to participate in a podcast called Failure Stories. Will you come and talk about your failure? But that's the whole point. It's like Brene Brown when she was talking about when she was first getting out there talking about vulnerability, she would get invitations to speak, and the people inviting her would say, "We'd love for you to speak on your work, but just please don't talk about shame." And that's the crux, that's her whole point. The whole point of her work is releasing the stigma we have about shame. So to invite someone to come and not touch the heart of that is really fascinating. So it's like we want to talk about success, but we don't want to talk about failure. We want to talk about, providing opportunities for disadvantaged children to get educations, but we don't want to talk about what's happening at the top tier in the highest value real estate zip codes in our country, and those kids, and how they're kind of all very adept and successful at pushing themselves to do the game of getting into Ivy League colleges or whatever it is. List all the things that you'd want in a model child of success for elite parents. And what I love is there's multiple stories from both coasts saying that that's not really working so well either, although it's a lot easier to mask that in society, because you're going to get into a college, which is a lot better than a lot of people are doing, and then you're going to have a job probably at, investment banking, consulting, law firm, some company, which is a lot better. At least it's a job, is what the rest of the kind of the mass media would say. But it's subclinical desperation. So you're going to go get the diagnosis, or are you going to live the masked life? Or are you going to let it all go to find out who you really are and what your life really would look like if you went for it? Not for the it that everyone else wants, but maybe the it of living in a van down by the river by choice, making jewelry and selling it, or surfing, or traveling to Southeast Asia and teaching English. I mean, whatever. It's infinite. And yes, those are all fantasies that I've entertained at one time or another, perhaps even this morning. So, this is the conversation that I'm arriving at that I really want to have. And this is after so many attempts to create programs to match what I'm seeing out there as a successful online marketing or whatever it is, this model that has planted its seed in my mind as how people do it who are successful. And I've done them. I've gone through a lot of work to actually create things that look like those, to the extent that I can do it, to the extent that I can bring myself to imitate those things. And what it's helped me to do, and here's the value of those, what you could call failures, but what I see now is, the necessary movement in a direction to find out through that movement what the course corrections are. What is the direction? You have to move in a direction to figure out what the adjustment is, to recommit to your heart. And so the value of failure is its movement in a direction, and then the ability to course correct is so essential. And I would say that I wasn't even launching into these things saying I'm going to fail. I launched with the earnest desire to do that. And then I caught myself in the pushing. And it's happened twice in the last 2 years for me. 3 years. Because the first time I pushed something, and when I got to the point of I just can't do the pushing anymore, what I found out, what I discovered was art, my art. That's when I started doing sketchbooks. I started making journals. I started really dedicating myself to giving myself art every day, and it just blossomed. And this time, when I pushed and realized I was pushing against something that wasn't moving for me, what I realized was this whole arena, which is like the origin of the thing. So it's kind of like there's the Beowulf story where they kill Grendel, which they thought was the enemy, and then the next day they were celebrating because they thought they'd killed the beast, and it was the mother of Grendel who came back and killed a bunch of people. So it's not the thing you fear, it's the mother of the thing you fear. So this is like the thing I went after wasn't it, it's the mother of the thing that I'm going after. So all of this success culture, achievement culture, failure, elite education, and how this all ties together is the mother of the thing. It's the mother, and it really all converges on doctors. So ironically, Palo Alto Asian American youth suicide and physician suicide, what do they have in common? Who's asking that question? And how is the seed of that which leads to it the same, if you want to see it as a problem to be solved? But what's the seed of it that actually grows in each of us and expresses itself at some subclinical level, those of us who haven't committed suicide, who don't have the diagnosis, who aren't at the point of, quote, seeking help, but we're just here navigating life? How does that seed live in each of us? And how have we navigated it, and how helpful are those stories for people also on this journey of navigating life and facing different decision points and course corrections? So that's where I am today.